Hey guys, how y'all doing today? My name is Franchise Fanatic, and welcome back to the channel. And today for you guys is another Marvel movie review. Now, if you have seen my Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse review, if you haven't, go check it out. But this is going to be my official review for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So yeah, I'm not going to do any spoilers because it is still in theaters. It's still relatively fresh. I know I've seen it about, I don't know, like a friggin' month, but you know, it's fine. But if you enjoyed this review, make sure to like, subscribe if you're new. I really do appreciate it. It's free, takes you 1 second, and I do appreciate it. So anyway, Across the Spider-Verse, a bit of a history before I get into the actual review. I actually didn't plan on seeing this in theaters because, you know, I enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse. I recently just rewatched it again. Go check out my review. And I love that movie. You know, you have to actually watch the video to see what I thought about it, but I enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse upon rewatch. So going into Across, when I saw the trailers, I was like, this is gonna be awesome. You know, the animation's good. It's a continuation of the story. You know, Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, he's cool. Oscar Isaac, right? Moon Knight, Poe Dameron, great stuff. I guess he's Apocalypse, but you know, whatever. And then, you know, news hit that it had all this woke crap, and I'm not gonna take time on it. I'm not a political channel, as you guys know. I'm Republican, okay? That's not a shocker to anyone here if you've watched most of my videos. I detest the woke media. And I'm not one of those Republican channels that, you know, just shits on them for giggles. But, you know, the reason why I did not want to see this is I didn't want to give them my money. You know, we got, again, without getting into it, of course, they had the Protect Trans Kids flag. I don't want to start World War III in the comments. I don't agree with that personally. If you are, that's fine. I respect your choice as a human. But myself, I don't align with that. So seeing that, I was like, I don't know. And then the BLM thing, again, all lives matter, just... all I'm saying is look into it. It's a bit crooked. But all that behind us, I really was like, because Echo Killshot saw it, and he was like, oh my god, Franchise, you gotta watch this movie. It's a friggin' masterpiece. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to give them my money to support the woke ideologies. And he's like, well, it's just a flag. It's only there for, like, a scene, not even, like, 4 shots. You know, the button, it's barely... And I'm like, look, that's the bad thing, because it's so quick, it's such a blink and you'll miss a moment that... they put this woke crap into a well-made movie, it's going to make a butt ton of money, and then that's their cue that they can keep doing it, and that they're allowed to get away with it. And the only reason to stop the woke stuff is to not support it. But some of you guys are like, alright, you got to watch this. Echo was like, alright, you got to watch this. My cousin was like, you got to watch this. So I'm like, alright, I'll effing watch it, okay? So, full disclosure, I do not support the woke ideologies in this movie. In fact, I detest them completely. I don't agree with them. It's garbage. Get either left wing or right wing. Get it out of my movies. I don't want political shite. I just want a movie. Take that out. Of course, like I said with the first movie, I'm not gonna, you know, the woke stuff. I'm not gonna, you know, that will not degrade the rating, right? So I'm not gonna, oh well, it's got the trans flag, so it's an F. No, I'm not that shallow, okay? I don't agree with that stuff, but I'm not gonna be like, well, this actually is a bad movie. No, like I said, that's not gonna impact my score. That being said, if you know, it's like Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller is a garbage, awful human being that should be either dead or in jail. But I love the Flash movie. You know what I mean? It's hard to distinguish the two, right? You know, if you don't like let's say Ben Affleck was a murderer. Yeah, I don't agree with that. You know what I mean? Ezra, whatever he's doing with cults and Iceland, of beating up women in Alaska and grooming 13-year-olds, whatever the hell he's doing, looking like a mushroom Barbie doll. Whatever, you know what I mean? He's an idiot, but he's a good Flash. You know, I don't like this woke stuff in this movie, even if it's quick, but the movie itself, Across the Spider-Verse, is a very, very, very good movie. And I'm glad I saw it in theaters, okay? Echo, if you're watching, you won. Okay, I enjoyed it. Now, I do have some issues, which, again, it's hard to review this without spoiling it, because this is a long-ass movie. As far as I'm aware, this is actually the longest animated movie in Western cinema. You know, what I mean is, you know, no anime and anything, you know, just like American-made, whatever. This is a long movie, coming in roughly 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It's a big animated movie. And there were moments where I felt, okay, this is the end, and then it kept going. I was like, alright, this is the end, and it kept going. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about one or two negatives here. I mentioned it in Into the Spider-Verse. One of my main issues with it is that it had this quote-unquote visual noise, right? And what I mean by that is not necessarily noise you hear, but noise you see, in that there's so much going on. I felt like I needed like an epilepsy warning, because I don't get seizures, but Into the Spider-Verse had this, but this movie was like times effing 10 because there's a lot of flashing lights and there's a lot of colors and there's a lot of Spider-Man. And you take Miles Morales and Gwen, for example, who are relatively animated the same, versus, say, the Muslim Spider-Man, I don't know his name, which is animated slightly different, versus the punk rocker Spider-Man, which is, like, really animated differently. And, I like that they're doing that. I like the comic booky look to it. It's very, very, it's objectively well made. But there are moments where I'm like, okay, there's a lot of stuff happening, right? You get these scenes in this movie where you have, like, 5 or 4 different Spider people, and then toward the end you get, like, 100 of them, and you've seen it in the trailer. But, that's not as bad. But there's moments where you get Miles, Gwen, the Muslim one, the rocker one. Again, I didn't really know their names. But, they're all together, for example, and they're all kind of animated slightly differently. And they're all talking and bantering and making jokes, and it's hard to concentrate on the lines when you have all these different character designs. They're all swinging into Timbuktu and who knows where, and the camera's going haywire, and there's colors flashing, and there's comic book panel, words flying across the screen. It felt like I did crap, and I don't endorse drugs. I've never done drugs. I never will do drugs. Drugs will completely fuck your life. I'm just going to say that. I had to say that word because it does, but also, I don't want to get flagged for being a kids-only video because I want you guys to make comments, and I have to swear or else YouTube freaks out. But behind us, it felt like I was snorting a line of coke, and then took a bunch of death sticks, and then I just walked in the theater. I mean, there are moments in this movie where, again, it feels very, very chaotic, and that visual noise is very, very high. And it's almost impossible to know what the heck's going on because people, like I said, there's flashing lights and there's comic book panel words that go like, when you read a comic book, they have the yellow rectangles and they have like words in them, or Miguel O'Hara says some kind of word and then at the bottom it says, what it's from. It's meant to be a joke and you're supposed to laugh. But you're also supposed to frickin' read it, and they wrote like a little paragraph in it, and it lasts like 2 seconds. And that all with the music, that all with the talking. You gotta concentrate on the words, and then there's all this flashing lights and colors. It's exhausting. And at the end of the movie, I was like, Jesus Christ, like that was a very, very well-made movie, and I loved it. But Jesus, like man, that was a lot to take in, And besides the visual noise, there are moments where, especially toward the end, where you think it's gonna end. And there's this action scene, and it's riding high, there's tension, and then something happens, you're like, ooh, man, this is going to be a cool cliffhanger, this is going to be great, and then it keeps going. And then there's a slower scene, and I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, we're still going? Like, I like it, it's good, like, I'm enjoying myself. But man, it felt like there were like 8 acts. By the 3rd act, you're normally done. Sometimes there's a 4th if you really want to look at it that way. But there was like 10 acts in this movie. Stuff happens, and you're like, oh, okay, it's over, and then it keeps going, and keeps going, and keeps going, and I'm like, oh my god, when, like I love it, but Jesus Christ, when will this end? And then when it actually ends, I was like, that was intense, and it definitely is more intense, not just because of the editing and the pacing, but in terms of the storytelling, and that's really where the negatives end. The woke stuff doesn't impact the score, obviously. The only thing that will impact the score is that visual noise, right? It can feel very chaotic, where it's almost impossible to figure out what's going on. Now, you could argue, oh, well, it warrants a second watch, right? It's stuff you notice in the background, but this isn't like the Lego movies or like Space Jam: A New Legacy, where you see shit in the background, you're like, oh, that's cool, and then you rewatch a second time and you see other stuff, and you're like, oh, that's really cool, I didn't notice that the first time. This is stuff you're supposed to see the first time. But the shots are really, really fast. The action scenes are so effing chaotic. It's hard to comprehend what's going on half the time. And again, I'm not some old boomer, right? I'm 24. I'm like the perfect audience for this movie. Because there was a little kid in this theater, and this is not a kid's film by any stretch. There was a lot of violence, a lot of swearing for a PG. I'm genuinely surprised this was not PG-13. This should not be a PG movie. Like Cars 2? Should not be rated G, okay? Cars die in that movie. There are deaths in that movie. Explosions, guns, they say kill, murder. How the fudge is Cars 2 rated G? How is Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark PG? How is this movie PG Across the Spider-Verse? It makes no friggin' sense, but whatever. So yeah, it is an intense movie, and Into the Spider-Verse was very much more a comedic film. This one has some funny moments, specifically with Spot, the main villain, which isn't really that scary of a villain. He kind of looks a little weird. He's more or less played for laughs, right? There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of freaking cameos in this movie that, sadly, I kind of knew a lot of beforehand because, again, I didn't plan on seeing this, so I did kind of look them up myself like an idiot. But at the same time, I was like, okay, there's a few things in there I was like, oh, that's cool. I genuinely love all these cameos and all that stuff. And a lot of them are play for laughs. Obviously, right, it's the Spider-Verse. There's going to be a shite ton of Spider-Man. And I am a massive Spider-Man fan, so seeing all these different ones, I was like, oh, that's, really cool to see this character, that character. But it is funny, but it's more or less played for laughs with that guy. But it's kind of weird tonally, this film as well. I don't really want to say this is a negative, but in the beginning, there's a lot of these frantic action scenes, and Miles Morales is cracking jokes, and Gwen's making jokes, and Spot's making jokes, and they're all kind of flopping and flooping around, and it's just it's funny, and it's just intense, and there's action everywhere. And then kind of the second and third acts, and even the fourth act and fifth, sixth, seventh act, there is action, but not as much, and then it kind of stoops away from being funny to being very serious and very dark and very somber, and the cliffhanger is like, holy crap, you know what I mean? And then it says Beyond the Spider-Verse coming out whenever in 2024 or 25, I don't know. But it is kind of tonally all over the place. If you're gonna make a comedy, make it a comedy. If you're gonna make it a drama, make it a drama. And I get it, you can have funny moments in a drama and you can have serious moments in a comedy, but it just felt a little bit like they were trying to be funny and like, yeah, this is lighthearted, this is funny, and then at the end they shift completely the other way into barely any jokes, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it's not really a negative, it's just something I kind of noticed. But other than that, I mean, I can't really sing its praises enough, man. I mean, it's a bit wonky that Spider-Man Peter B. Parker's robe the whole time. Whatever. Instead of pink, why the hell are you in a pink robe? I don't know. Anyway, I really did enjoy this film though. Excuse me, allergies. Ugh, got him, I hate him. But, I mean, what's not to love, except for all this stuff I mentioned? At least in my opinion, besides the visual noise, the animation is even better than Into the Spider-Verse, right? It's just, it looks like eye candy. It's so fun to look at, when you're not over dying a bit, from the chaoticness, the chaos of it all. But it does look great. The voice lines, the voice acting is, of course, really great as well. I think Miles is even better this time around. Of course, Miles is a little bit older. Gwen Stacy's really good. Everyone else is really great. I will admit that the Peter, the punk rock Parker, like the Black Britain guy, I don't know his name. I could barely understand. He kind of looks like the guy from Dead Island 2. Jacob, maybe, and I'm not an idiot, but I could barely understand what he said. He talks, he's like, oh yeah, but go over here, man, screw this is. I'm like, what are you saying? And my mom understood it, so maybe it's me, I don't know. That's why I'm not, putting it in part of the negatives. But just a little side note, because man, I could barely understand that guy. But other than that, I thought it was really cool. Of course, when they all do the little backstories, like, the Muslim guy or the Britain guy or whatever, they have to, put in politics. Oh, the Muslim guy's like, Britain stole our stuff, or, the rocker guy's like, oh, screw the system, man, politics. I'm surprised you didn't mention how bad Trump is as a person. He's not, but, I just thought they mentioned that, but they didn't, thank God. So yeah, just some weird creative choices in there, but overall, when you do go to these, different Spider-Verses, like the Muslim one or the punk rocker one, they're good characters, they're really cool, and that all blends together really well. Again, like Into the Spider-Verse, this movie has so many Spider people in it, it's insane. But the ones that are actually part of the main storyline, right, as they call, even in the film, they mention the word canon events. These canon characters, these main characters that you follow in the story, they all have their backstories, you see them, their motivations. Obviously the punk rock one, the Muslim one, whatever, they're not obviously as well developed as Miles or Gwen or even Peter B. Parker, but they're there and they're good additions to the movie, and I enjoy going to their different realms and their Earths or universes or whatever. Again, great cameos, great story. I do think there really isn't necessarily a villain in this other than Spot. He's just there, I guess. He's kind of a, he's like, if you watch Ninjago, he's like the mechanic in the earlier seasons. Then if you've watched Prime Empire Season 12, the mechanic becomes a really, really well-developed villain. in Ninjago. Same kind of thing here. Spot in the beginning is like, oh, whatever. And we find out his backstory, and then in the end, he's kind of intimidating and kind of evil. So I do think that's kind of cool. Miguel O'Hara, Oscar Isaac is great as Spider-Man 2099. Going to Nueva York is really cool. You've probably seen it in the gameplay here. The futuristic city or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really intense, man. And by the end, I mean, it's a gripping narrative. And I like I said, maybe it went on a bit too long. It felt like there were 20 different acts. It felt like it should have ended 17 different times. But it is very, very interesting and intriguing, so that when it does end, you're like, oh man, what the fudge? What's gonna happen next, man? This is nuts. And I really, really loved every second of it. With these negatives, with the woke crap, I am glad I saw it. Okay, I'm a massive Marvel fan. I'm a massive Spider-Man fan, and I kind of walked out of the movie a little giddy. I'm like, I can't wait to see where this goes. It's going to be really, really crazy. And yeah, there's negatives. I think there are a little more negatives in this one than there were in the first one. But I did enjoy this one better than the first one. The first one is a pretty basic story. Obviously, it's like an origin story for Miles. This is the one where you're getting into more Spider-Verses, more detail in the depth of the story. And by the end of it, you're like, wow, this is like a damn good narrative. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. But yeah, like I said, it's really hard to talk about it without going into spoilers, but the stuff that is spoiler-worthy is insane. The cameos are insane, even though I've kind of ruined it for myself beforehand. They're still good, and that's really cool. But the best thing this movie does, without ruining it, is that this film manages to... They kind of break the fourth wall. They kind of Deadpool it by saying, oh, canon events, right? Canon, see. Basically, it's not like a canon, like a pirate canon. For those who don't know, in franchise land, the word canon means that it basically happened. Like, it's official. It's real, Take Star Wars, for example, right? Star Wars, the canon would be just... In the most basic form, the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy. In Legends, which is, I don't want to piss anyone off, but it's essentially fan fiction. It's not canon, right? It's not official. It's still there, and you can still love it, and I'm not knocking Legends, but Legends is not real, right? It's not canon. And I know some people don't give a crap. Oh, whatever, enjoy what you want. And I agree, but that's just an example. There are canon events of this film where, like, wow, and they're able to kind of, weld the different universes together, which, without spoiling it, made me very, very, very effing happy, because I'm like, wow, they're able to do this stuff, and it just makes me love. Think of it like Spider-Man No Way Home. They managed to make the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire franchises canon to the MCU. And all the explanation you need is, oh, it's part of the multiverse. And boom, just like that. My love for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield movies got instantly better. You look at The Flash. The Michael Keaton Batman universe is canon to the DCEU. It's just another Earth. That's their word, right? So that's all great stuff. I think a lot of people hate the multiverse, and they're kind of sick of it. I think if it's done great, if it's done well, I'm effing good for it, man. The Flash did it great. The No Way Home did it great. This movie did it great. And it just, if you do the multiverse thing correctly, it should enhance your love for the product you're watching and the products that came before it. Because now, it breathes new life into these older franchises and makes them relevant again. This film did that in heaps. It's insane. I mean, I really can't fathom it, man. There's shite that happens in this movie, these cameos, that make it canon, where you're like, wow, I watched that show when I was like 10 or 12, or I played that game, or I watched that older live-action movie, and this is there. I'm sure there's a lot of references I didn't see the first time, and when I get it on Blu-ray, I'll of course see it again. But yeah, so that part is really great. And again, man, as far as negatives go, like I said, there are more than the first one. Like I said, the woke stuff I don't count, but really the only stuff that really knocks it down a peg in terms of my overall grading for this film is the visual noise. There's a lot of stuff happening on screen, and it oftentimes can be very overwhelming for the senses. Oftentimes I miss what a character's saying because there's so many lights and I'm trying to concentrate on where the hell Miles is compared to Gwen, and I'm like, this is just insane. I get why they did it, and the shots are great. There's some dude, the cinematography in this movie, like the first one, it's like top tier. It's really good stuff. But at the same time, there's stuff that happens and you're like, all right, you can calm down a bit, Again, the Lego movies are they strike that balance between chaos and calm, where, you know, you watch the 4 Lego movies and you're never like, oh, this is just insane, I can't understand what's going on. This one is a bit crazy. And then again, like I said, there are moments when I thought the film was going to end, and it just kept going and going and going and going and going. But I don't hate that. You know, the stuff that kept going was great, but at the same time, I felt like, all right, this is like too many acts, or there's too many endings, you know what I mean? It could have been a bit shorter, or you keep it the same length, but just don't have like a million cliffhangers until you get the actual cliffhanger. But overall, man, the animation, for the most part, top-tier animation. It's up there with Tintin, the Lego movies, etc., Rise of the Guardians. In terms of how they look, the voice acting is great across the board. It's very funny at times. The cameos are great. The story is very exciting, very intriguing. And yeah, it just pains me that there's so much woke crap. And I know it's so quick, but again, that's how they do it. They're able to just... Now they have free reign, right? Because this movie made a shit ton of money. So now, oh, let's just sneak that in next time. They'll never notice, you know? And it sucks. I didn't want to give them my money to support that stuff. But at the same time, I did have a lot of fun. And I came out of the theater going, yeah, this is great. Like, I had a great time, you know what I mean? I don't like that stuff. I just don't agree with it personally as a human, and I don't like, you know, some of the animation stuff, or, you know, the length of the film. But that aside, man, it's great. Like, the action is great, the voice acting great, animation's really great for the most part. It's a really, really well told story. All the characters' backstories come together really nicely. They do this fourth wall breaking shite where it doesn't feel like it's cringy. They actually kind of make it work into the story, and they were able to kind of enhance my love for Spider-Man, not only as Miles Morales' character or Gwen's character or Peter B. Parker. But, you know, I like the Muslim Spider-Man and the Rocker Spider-Man. When I can understand what the heck he was saying, I like those characters. I want to see more of them in their worlds. And, you know, seeing all the stuff that's actually now canon as these little quick cameos as part of the multiverse, there's some hidden gems in there, man, that really, really made me happy. So, yeah, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I have some issues with it. And, not politically, but I guess personally, I don't agree with some of the choices they made. But overall, I had a really great time. I'm glad I see it. So I'm gonna give Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I'll give it a B+. I think it was really, really great. Again, there were moments where I was like, all right, this is, you know, why are you giving it a B+? Well, hopefully you listen to the whole review, you know why, but I'm not going to rehash myself and make this any longer than it has to be. But yeah, I loved it. Again, it's hard to talk about these specific spoilers without spoiling it, but at the same time, it's really hard. But do yourself a favor. I know there's a lot of, especially really hard right-wing people that throw their hissy fits in the comments and say, and you're like, I'm one of them, okay? I was like, I don't want to see this because of that and this and this. But it is a really great movie, and it sucks that stuff is in there. I guess if you're left-wing... happy days. If you're right wing, it's all hell broke loose. But again, politically, I don't really care. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. It's tough because you can't say something now without getting canceled, and I don't intend on getting canceled. Free speech, right? Well, I guess it's only free speech until someone doesn't like it, but that's another discussion. But yeah, just get your left-wing stuff, get your right-wing stuff, I don't care what spectrum you're on, just get the political crap out of my movies, please. And that being said, B+. Like I said, I don't like that stuff. There are some issues, but it's really fun, pretty funny at times, very action-packed, very intense, very gripping, and I genuinely cannot wait for Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Hopefully that comes out soon, doesn't get delayed too much. But without spoiling it, tell me in the comments down below what you thought about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Thank you to Echo Killshot for making this thumbnail. I forgot to say it in the first one, but thank you. I appreciate it. Really banger thumbnails, bro. Really good stuff. And yeah, again, I really enjoyed the movie. I'm glad I saw it. Again, there's some things I don't agree with personally and in terms of the film, but I came out of the theater very happy. A little overwhelmed, a little like, wow, Jesus. Like, I came out of Evil Dead Rise and Joker, like, I needed to take a breath. Like, that was like traumatic in a good way. And this was kind of like that too, just obviously not as bad as, you know, an R-rated drama and an R-rated horror film. But at the same time, this was very, very intense and very gripping and very, you know, dramatic and funny and action-packed. It's everything that Into the Spider-Verse was, just a little bit more, and for the most part, a little bit better. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.